Hey there, how are you doing today? If this is your first time checking out this channel, then welcome to the Rambling Druid. And if this is your second time coming because you saw the first video, then welcome back. I am so excited that you decided to click on this video and see what it was about. Today I am so excited to talk about character creation because I personally love making D&D characters. And by love, I mean I'm slightly obsessed. And by slightly obsessed, I mean I have a whole binder full of characters that I haven't even used yet. There's at least 12 in here. I may have a problem, but it's the best kind of problem, so I'm okay with that. Now today, we are going to be talking about the basics of character creation, the first few steps that you take, how you kind of decipher your way through the world of D&D, and then in a future video, if you are interested in that, we will also dive a little bit deeper into some of the more, shall we say, complex aspects of making a character. So to get started, there are 4 things that you will need in order to make a D&D character. If you are doing the old-fashioned pen and paper version, which is my favorite, you will need a pencil, a character sheet, a scrap piece of paper for making notes and different things like that, and last but certainly not least, a copy of the player's handbook. So these 4 things are really, really important when making a D&D character, especially the player's handbook, because that's where you're going to find most of the information that you're going to need. Now, there is another alternative that you can use if you prefer to do more digital kind of things. There is a website called D&D Beyond where you can go on and create an account and make a character, and you have access to some of the resources, not all of them. If you want to join and pay the full membership for D&D Beyond, then you have access to everything. But if you want to just start off making a basic character, it's a good place to start too. I personally just prefer pen and paper versions, so that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. So when you're making a D&D character, the first thing you want to think of is, what kind of character do you want to have? Do you want to have a magical character or a not magical character? The world of D&D is a fantasy-based world, but there are different people that have different roles in that world. You don't have to be able to cast magic in order to have a really awesome character in Dungeons and Dragons. And so the cool thing is to know kind of a little bit about each one of the kinds of people you can be, and then figure out what exactly you want to do. So normally when you make a character, you want to first start with the race of your character, and then you want to talk about what kind of class your character is going to have. So the race of your character is basically your character's family lineage, what their appearance looks like because of their family background. Now, today when I'm talking about the different races and classes that are available in Dungeons & Dragons, I am only going to be referring to the ones found in the player's handbook. There are so many other options for different races and different classes that you can find in other supplemental books that go along with Dungeons & Dragons, but the player's handbook has the basics, and so as to not overwhelm you if it's your first time creating a character, we're going to stick with the basics. So the different races that are in Dungeons & Dragons are dwarves, elves, halflings, humans, dragonborns, gnomes, half-elves, half-orcs, and tieflings. If you're familiar with the world of Lord of the Rings, which obviously I am because of this lovely hobbit pillow, then you've probably heard the races of dwarf and elf before. Halflings are most commonly associated with hobbits in Tolkien's world. So if you want a character that's kind of like a hobbit, halfling would be the way to go. Gnomes are more, they are shorter than halflings. Then you have dragonborns. Dragonborns are really cool. They're basically bipedal dragons that can communicate and have intelligent thought and stuff like that. So they stand on 2 legs like human, but they are covered completely in scales, which is really awesome. And there's some really cool abilities that come with that as well. Half-elves and half-orcs are beings that, as their name states, are half of one species and half of another. So a half-elf is half human and half elf, and a half-orc is half human, half orc. Kind of makes sense. Tieflings are very unusual, but pretty awesome. So they get their origin from having demonic blood in their bloodline, and it results in them having these different skin tones that could be normal skin tones, but most of the time they are different kinds of colors, like red and white and blue, kind of that thing, purple, sometimes green, different kinds of colors like that. They also have a characteristic of having horns on their head, which is pretty interesting too. Alright, so that's the races. Now we're going to move on to the classes. There are 12 total classes in the player's handbook, and I'm going to go over those, but then I'm going to kind of break them down into 2 different categories. So, the general overview is that the classes in Dungeons & Dragons, I got to pull out my sticky note because I have a hard time remembering all of them, are Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. I know that's a lot, but just hang with me. So, those are the different kinds of characters you can have. So, these 12 classes can be broken into 2 groups, spellcasters and not spellcasters. The classes that fit into the spellcasting category are bards, clerics, druids, paladins, rangers, sorcerers, wizards, and warlocks. Now that's about 75% of most of the classes in Dungeons & Dragons. Some of them have a lot of magic that they do. Some of them have a little bit of magic. But those are the ones that whose primary focus in interactions and combat sequences relies on magic. So if you want to have a magical character, that's what you want to go with. Now, if you're not so sure about how to use magic in Dungeons & Dragons and you don't want to overwhelm yourself, then you can go with some of the non-magical options, which even though they're not magical, they're still really, really cool. There are 4 different classes that fit into the non-magical category, and those are barbarians, fighters, monks, and rogues. Now, even within these 4 classes, some of them at higher levels have a chance for you to use magic. So if you change your mind and you're like, man, I really wish I had an opportunity to do something with magic, you can have a chance later if you want to. But if you don't want to worry about having to deal with spell casting, you just want to do the normal combat stuff with swords and bows and stuff like that, then you can go with the non-magical options. So, as kind of an example, I'm going to walk you through how to make a character using one of the races and one of the classes that I just mentioned. Now, since spellcasting characters can be a little bit harder to do, for this first video, I'm going to do just a character that is a race found in the player's handbook and also is a non-magical class, just so that it's not super confusing. Now, if you're interested in possibly seeing a video where I explain how to make a spellcasting character, be sure to like the video and leave a comment down below saying that that's what you want to see, because I do look at the comments to see what y'all are suggesting and stuff like that. But to get started, the character race and class that I have picked for today is going to be a half-orc fighter, which I think is really cool. So, this is where your character sheet is going to come in very handy. That was the back. This is the front. So, your character sheet has a spot in the top right portion that has places for you to put your character's class, their race, their alignment and background. Also, don't worry about that right now. And a couple of other things. So, at the top of your page, since we know we're going to have a half-orc fighter, you want to go ahead and put that in there. And we are going to start by looking at the race and seeing the different abilities and qualities that that race has. So, we're going to start with our half-orc pages in the player's handbook. I also just really like looking through the player's handbook because the pictures are beautiful. I mean, come on, this artwork is awesome. Okay, so we're going to skip the names for right now. Names are really cool, but you want to kind of establish what your character is going to be before you name them. Unless you have a really cool name in mind, in which case, just use that one, go for it. But we're going to start with a section that says half-orc traits. So, first thing we see under half-orc traits is something that's called ability score increase. And you're like, oh my goodness, what is an ability score? Don't worry about it right now. That's where your scrap piece of paper is going to come in handy. And here it says, ability score increase. Your strength score increases by 2, and your constitution score increases by 1. All you have to do on your scrap piece of paper is write down strength plus 2 And then I'm just going to put con because constitution is a really long word to write out. And sometimes you don't feel like writing long words. So con plus 1. You write that on your paper, you set it aside, and you don't worry about it until you need to. Alignment. Another thing that you want to think about. You want to think about what generally drives your character. And this is something that you're not really going to figure out until after you've made the character. So see alignment here. You can read through that. That's totally fine. But don't worry about it for right now. Your speed. This is really important, especially in combat situations. Your speed is the maximum amount of movement that you can make in a turn. So an orc speed is average. It's 30 feet. Next, we see something called dark vision. Also super cool. Some different races in Dungeons and Dragons can see 60 feet in the dark, sometimes even longer, because of dark vision, because it's just in their blood. Now, there's some races that can't. The races that can see with dark vision, they have a better chance to be successful in situations where they're trying to be stealthy, especially at night, because they don't have to rely on different kinds of lighting. They just rely on what they have through their dark vision. So here it says that their dark vision is 60 feet. So what I'm going to do is in this little box right here that says features and traits. It's very nice. They have lines on here, which helps me a lot because I tend to write all over the place if I don't have lines. You're going to write right at the very top, dark vision, 60 feet. Next, this is really cool. This is an ability that just half orcs have, is menacing. And it means that you gain proficiency in the intimidation skill. Okay, so all we're going to do right now is we're going to look at our character sheet. And on our character sheet, we see a box right here that says skills. So for intimidation, we're just going to put a plus right there and keep on going. Another thing it says is relentless endurance. When you are reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, you can drop to 1 hit point instead. That's really important in combat because in the campaign that I'm in, my character is an Asimir druid and I do not have that ability. Very few races actually do. So it's really cool that this is one of the features of half orcs, but you want to make sure that you write that down. You can't do it all the time, obviously, because that would mean that you would never die. And that would kind of be a bit broken for the character. So it says at the very bottom of this little section, you can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. So what I would do is right underneath dark vision on your character sheet. Shorthand is really good to use when you're making these notes because there's not a whole lot of room on the character sheet. But you want to make sure that you write it in a way that's understandable for you and that you don't confuse yourself. Also, something that's just really helpful for me is I like to put little bullet points or little dashes at the start of sections so that I can know, oh, this is a section. Well, I'll read that and then I'll skip down to the next one. It's just a little helpful tip for you. So, savage attacks. This is really cool. When you score a critical hit with a melee weapon attack, you can roll 1 of the weapon's damage dice 1 additional time and add it to the extra damage of the critical hit. That's really cool. Alrighty, so now we have all our racial abilities for our character. Now we're going to move to our class. Alright, so what you want to start with is looking at the page that says fighter in the handbook. On this page, there is a little table that you can see that says the fighter. It has a section for each level, a section here for proficiency bonus, and a section here for features. We're making a first level character, so just this first line right here is what we're going to be looking at. So for first level, it says our proficiency bonus is 2. That means in this little spot on the sheet that says proficiency bonus, you're going to put plus 2. All right, class features. First off, it says hit points. This is the amount of points that your character has during combat that they have the full potential of. When your character uses up those points as they are getting hit by different enemies, your hit points start to drop, and once you reach 0, your character goes unconscious. It sounds kind of scary, but it happens to everybody. My character has been unconscious who knows how many times. It's also because I'm a druid and I am not super dexterous. I get into all kinds of situations, but it makes it kind of fun. Unconscious, not so much, but that's how it is. Each character has their strengths and their weaknesses. So it says 1d10. So when we are looking at our sheet, we're going to look at this part right here that says hit dice, and you're going to write exactly what it says, 1d10. And then it says hit points at first level. This is really important. 10 plus your Constitution modifier. Now, we don't know what Constitution modifier is yet, and that's totally fine. But what we do know is that we can have our hit point maximum, our current hit points, and our temporary hit points according to our character sheet. What you're going to want to do is in this section right here that says current hit points, you're going to write 10 plus con mod. Just for right now. That's also why it's really important to use a pencil. And I'm actually going to save the rest of the character creation for another time, because making a character is something that's a bit of a process, and I don't want to try to squish too much into one video. So this is kind of like a part 1 of how to make a character. If you want to see a part 2 of how we can finish this character off, give it some different unique background characteristics. There's really cool options that you get once you get into backgrounds, and it's really awesome. It's a lot of fun. That's probably my favorite part about making a character. Talking about how the character will look and what the character will think as its ideals and stuff like that is also really, really fun too. So if you are interested in seeing that, then like this video. If you want to see a spellcasting character as well, let me know in the comments down below. You can even suggest what kind of characters you want to see. And I love making characters, so I'd be more than happy to show you how to do that. I hope you have a fantastic day filled with lots of magic and lots of love. I'll see you next time.